Hello and welcome back to the Essential GovCon Brief, the podcast where we break down recent legal developments affecting government contractors. I'm Patrick Burns, a partner in the Government Contracts Practice Group at Gordon Reese.
I'm Jeremy Camacho, also in the Government Contracts Group here at Gordon Reese. Each month we highlight a few legal developments contractors should have on their radar.
This month we're discussing three decisions: Fourth Circuit case involving executive orders affecting DEI-related federal funding; second, a Court of Federal Claims bid protest involving corrective action; and lastly, a GAO decision serves as a lesson learned for contractors about protest deadlines.
There's a theme this month. It's that procedure matters. Sometimes the outcome of a case turns less on the merits and more on whether the rules were followed. We all know that, but it's helpful to reinforce that idea.
That's exactly right, and we'll see that in all three cases we're covering today.
So let's start with the Fourth Circuit decision.
So the first case we're discussing is the National Association Diversity Officers in Higher Education versus Trump. And this is actually part of a line of cases that we've talked about previously on the podcast and in our written updates.
Earlier in the litigation, a district court issued a preliminary injunction blocking portions of executive orders that targeted DEI-related grants and contracts.
Those executive orders directed federal agencies to terminate certain equity-related grants and contracts, and they were also required recipients of federal funding to certify that they were not operating DEI programs that violate federal anti-discrimination laws.
Yeah, and as we discussed on prior episodes, that injunction was later stayed while the case was on appeal, which allowed executive orders to move forward during the appellate process.
So now the Fourth Circuit has weighed in and vacated the preliminary injunction entirely.
The court concluded that the plaintiffs were unlikely to succeed on their facial constitutional challenges.
One important point the court emphasized is that executive orders don't directly regulate private conduct. Instead, they instruct federal agencies to terminate certain funding to the maximum extent allowed by law.
So the court treated the orders more as internal policy directives to federal agencies rather than direct regulation of private entities.
The court also rejected the First Amendment challenge to the certification requirement, explaining that it simply requires recipients to affirm compliance with existing anti-discrimination laws.
So for now, the executive orders remain in effect while the case continues in the lower court.
And for contractors and grant recipients, the bottom line here is that these changes in executive policy affecting federal funding can move forward while the litigation is still playing out at the district court level. Now, let's turn to a bid protest case at the Court of Federal Claims, one involving what happens when an agency does not follow a court's prior order. So this case is Gemini Tech Services versus United States, and it involves a procurement under the Army's Enhanced Global Logistics Enterprise Contract Vehicle, also known as EAGLE.
And for anyone who practices in government contracts, EAGLE is a pretty significant logistics support vehicle for the Army.
Exactly. Gemini had previously filed a protest, and the court sustained that protest and issued an injunction requiring the Army to reevaluate the original proposals under the terms of the solicitation.
So at that point, the agency had pretty clear instructions from the court.
Right, but instead of simply reevaluating those proposals and making a new award decision, the Army amended the solicitation and asked offerors to submit revised proposals.
Which obviously changes the nature of the competition quite a bit.
Right, and Gemini then went back to court and argued that this violated the injunction because the court required evaluation of the original proposals, not a new round of proposals.
And the court agreed.
The judge explained that although the Army technically conducted a reevaluation, its decision to amend the solicitation and request new proposals effectively defeated the purpose of the court's order.
So essentially, the agency did perform a reevaluation, but they violated the spirit of the injunction by evaluating altered proposals instead.
That's right. So the court ultimately enforced the injunction and required the Army to comply with the original directive.
For contractors, this case shows that if you win a protest and obtain a favorable corrective action, that's not the end of the story. The agency must still comply with the order, which may require a subsequent enforcement action by the contract. So our last topic this month comes from the GAO and deals with something that comes up frequently in bid protests: timeliness rules.
And the message from GAO in this case is pretty straightforward: don't miss the filing deadline. Now, while that outcome certainly is obvious to attorneys, or it should be, the decision serves as a valuable lesson to contractors for potential protest pitfalls.
Yeah, this case is the JAAW Group, and the GAO dismissed the protest because it was filed too late.
The procurement involved a federal supply schedule acquisition for simulation support services issued by the Army.
After the award decision, the protester received a brief explanation and filed an agency-level protest challenging the evaluation. The contracting officer denied that protest, but instead of filing at the GAO within 10 days, the protester asked the agency to reconsider the decision and later received additional information from the contracting officer.
But the protester didn't actually file at the GAO until early December, right?
Yeah, and the GAO said that was untimely.
So under the GAO's rules, when a contractor files an agency-level protest first, any subsequent protest to GAO must be filed within 10 days of the agency's initial adverse action. Also applicable to notifications of award and the like, which trigger that 10-day protest deadline. So here was the denial of the agency protest, which triggered that 10-day deadline.
Now, the protester argued that the later debriefing restarted the clock.
But GAO rejected that argument because this was a federal supply schedule procurement where agencies are only required to provide a brief explanation, not a FAR Part 15 debriefing.
The GAO also made clear that asking the agency to reconsider its protest decision does not extend the GAO filing deadline.
So this case is a really good lesson learned, especially for contractors proceeding without legal representation. Most government contract attorneys certainly know that once an agency level protest is denied, you generally have 10 days to file at GAO.
Right. Continuing discussions with the agency might seem reasonable, but it doesn't stop the clock.
Exactly. So if a contractor is considering a GAO protest after filing at the agency level, the safest approach is to track that 10-day deadline very carefully. And if you'd like to read more about these decisions, you can find our full written update on the Gordon Reese Government Contracts Practice Group webpage.
And if you enjoyed the discussion, be sure to subscribe to the Essential GovCon Brief on Spotify and YouTube.
Thank you for listening.
We'll see you next month with more updates from the world of government contracts.